I did want to break off a thought or two, and because I haven't gotten to hear yours either, with regard to what happened with Dunleavy Jr. and the Warriors yesterday with his opening press conference. What stood out to you?
What stood out to me is a couple of things. First and foremost, there will be no president of basketball operations.
Okay.
Mike Dunleavy Jr. will be the GM. Bob Myers got to be president based on success, and Joe Lacob is not big on titles. So there will be no president of basketball operations, which tells me it's going to be more of a consortium than ever before. And that means that Joe Lacob, Kirk Lacob, Kent Lacob are all going to have an ability to whisper in the ear of Mike Dunleavy Jr., who is going to be the GM. And Joe did say that the final decision will rest with Mike Dunleavy Jr., but at the same time, he also said every decision that's made, draft pick or trade, it's all about the collective. It's a we.
Always, yeah.
It's not a he. So it felt to me more than ever like it's going to be a collaborative with a various number of Lacobs and Mike Dunleavy Jr.
That's true always, though, isn't it? I think that not only do all teams say that, I think there's a measure of truth to it, right? John Lynch is not going rogue making draft picks by himself.
At all.
Right.
But I also think that this might be further evidence as to why Bob Myers maybe wasn't long for the job because of the nature of the influence from various Lacobs and the owner and he even joked in the press conference about, because I think Tim Kawakami from The Athletic asked him, have you called Mike yet? And Joe said, is that a real question? And then Tim said, how many times have you called him, or when did you first call him? And Joe's like, I've been calling him for years.
Right.
I always call him. And so just hearing all that play out yesterday made me think more about why Bob maybe wanted to step away.
I heard a story recently from someone who has some insider knowledge with the Warriors that Bob Myers, once upon a time, not too long ago, in a meeting with the Warriors, said something about his leadership style. And that his leadership style, when you're in those collaborative conversations, was to get everyone's opinion in the room before you say your own. I want to hear okay, let's talk about this kid. Let's talk about that kid. What about a contract extension? Do we want to do that? And you throw it out, get every opinion in the room before you state your own. Because if you state your own first, you're in a position of influence. And therefore, the people in the room are going to be like, yeah, I agree with Bob.
Oh, Bob, you got that right. You got that right, Bob.
Bob, I think that's the guy we should go with. Because,
hey, Bob, you nailed it, Bob.
Right? Because that's just the way we are. That's human nature.
Great pick, Bob. Great pick.
Thank you. You're like, I want my job. I want my job. Keep my job. I want to be your assistant. So Bob would do that where he's like, okay, let's let everybody else have their say. And so I think that speaks to someone who's never been afraid to maybe have other opinions in the room. And you need that. You can't do stuff like this with your own eyes. I mean, you need scouts. You can't go watch every one of these prospects on your own. You've got to have a cap person. It's got to be a team effort.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I get that what we're used to. Bob had juice. Bob had cachet. Bob was the man. Well, now it's someone new. So by definition, when someone comes in and takes a new gig, they've got to build that cachet. And he doesn't have it yet. So is he going to listen to more people early in his career than he will late? I'm sure yes. Just like Bob probably did.
Right. And, Bob is not going to be that sounding board anymore for Mike Dunleavy Jr. So if you're Joe Lacob and you had Bob there who had tremendous success and maybe you had a certain amount of access and influence on Bob, you probably have more now with Mike Dunleavy Jr., who's less experienced and he's only been with the organization for 5 years, as opposed to Bob, who is here, just about the same amount of time as Joe Lacob. So it just felt to me a little bit more like Joe Lacob was going to have a stronger voice, and Kent and Kirk and whatever. That's great. You're the owner of the team. I'm not begrudging you for that, but that was one of my takeaways. The other one was something that we talked about on the thread, and you said Draymond Green, his next team is the Golden State Warriors. And I think based on those comments, I think it's easy to draw that conclusion. I'm still not sold on that being the way that this goes, but it certainly felt like the Warriors were putting it out there to Draymond as if to say, Draymond, we still are going to do everything we can to keep you here.
I just think there are things that are being said that are likely clues. You can't confirm anything.
Right.
Anything could happen. Negotiations could go sideways. The Lakers could show up with a 5-year, $250 million.
Man.
You know what I mean? I don't know exactly how this is going to play. But if I'm the Golden State Warriors, what I say, and they've now said it repeatedly, when you hear different people within the organization start to say the same thing, you know what that tells me? That tells me that that's what's being said in private meetings. Okay? Because they do. You don't have a press conference till you've all sat down and been like, all right, what's our messaging? We're an organization. We've got a public fan base. What's our messaging? How do we want to frame this question? How do we want to frame that? So when Warrior personnel, starting with Steve Kerr, and then trumpeted by Bob Myers, followed by Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Joe Lacob as well, when everyone's trumpeting the same thing, we're not a title contender without Draymond. We're not a title contender without Draymond. Well, Joe just said last week at the Bob press conference, we win. That's what we do. That's what we plan to do every year, no matter what, CBA or anything otherwise. Okay, take those two statements and blend them together. If you're saying we demand winning every year, and in the next sentence, we can't win the whole thing without Draymond, why would you say that publicly if you thought you were going to lose him? Because now, what if you do? The first question at a press conference after Draymond leaves and becomes a Pistons, the first question is, hey, you said that you can't win a title without him. So are you telling us right now you are no longer in title contention this year? It's going to be the first question. Why would you set yourself up for that if you weren't confident he was still going to be on the team?
I get that part of it, but I also go back to what you've talked about a bunch, which is we're not doing $450 million. So if you're going to bring back Draymond Green, and Draymond opts out of his final year, his player option for roughly $27 million or whatever the number is, and so now he wants a 3-year deal, I don't think that Draymond's taking a pay cut, and I also don't think that Draymond is coming back to make less than Jordan Poole. These are my beliefs. So,
what constitutes a pay cut? Can I ask you that?
A pay cut would be making 3 years and 75 would be a pay cut.
You think that's a pay cut?
Well, it would be for this next year, unless he's getting 30 and 25 and then 20.
But as a human being, you're not looking at that as a pay cut. Right now, I would say as a human being, if I opt in, I'm guaranteed $27 million. If I opt out, I'd be guaranteed 70. 70 is way more than 27. I don't think it's about...
that, but I don't think that he looks at it that way. And again, I don't know Draymond Green.
Yeah, I wonder.
But if you're Draymond Green, then take a deal for 4 years and 60 somewhere, because 60 is more than 27.
Well, but that's not the best deal. They know what's being offered.
They do.
Clutch Sports knows what's on the table.
Exactly. And I saw a graphic right when we got on the air about career earnings for Steph, Clay, and Draymond, as Draymond is way, way in third place among the big three.
Sure.
Not that he should earn as much as Steph, but you look at what Clay's made. Clay missed 2 full seasons due to injury, and he still has made about 60 to 70 more million total than Draymond Green
got a max deal. Draymond's never been a max player.
Draymond wanted a max deal, and he didn't get it.
He didn't deserve it. That's not what the market calls for.
But he wanted a max deal, and he didn't get it.
Well, I do too.
And Draymond Green got into a situation with Jordan Poole in preseason, and ostensibly what happened between the two derailed the season. Draymond's words, not mine. He lost his voice until February, and they could never recover from that. So I don't see a scenario where Draymond agrees to come back to the Warriors to make less than Jordan Poole, unless Jordan Poole is elsewhere.
Right. I think that's possible for sure. But I also think this. I think because of who Draymond is, and I totally understand this, but because of who Draymond is, because he is such a loud presence on the court and off, I think we attach ego to everything we think he's going to do. And I actually don't think that's who he is. I really don't. Just because he gets technical fouls and is very loud on a podcast does not mean that Draymond is solely driven by ego. So this idea that I'm not going to be on a team and make less than Jordan, or I'm not taking a $2 million pay cut in exchange for $50 more million. I don't know. Like, I echo you. I don't know Draymond either, so I could completely be wrong. But I feel like we've done this to him a few times where we attach this very egomaniacal response to things, and he's shown a number of times to not do that.
I think there's different things here.
Most recently being that idea after being suspended against Sacramento when so many of us were like, that guy's not coming off the bench. And he literally showed up to the arena to be like, I think I should come off the bench.
He told the coach, I should come off the bench.
Yeah, like I don't think he's as driven by ego as we may think.
I think there's two different things here, and I was impressed by that, and I was one of the people who didn't think that Draymond Green would come off the bench. But when you think about Draymond Green, the basketball player, he is one of the most selfless players. He's out there taking charges and setting screens, distributing the ball. He's guarding the other team's best player.
He brings jumper cables.
He's the epitome. Well, on the floor, absolutely.
Yes.
He's a human jumper cable.
Yes.
He wants to win, and he understands that playing a certain way is the only way to win. I think the other Draymond Green, the off-the-court Draymond, the podcaster, and the guy who's making 27.6 on a player option and says no thank you, and you see Jordan Poole making more, and you see Jordan Poole chirping, whatever was going on between Jordan Poole and Draymond Green, that to me had to do with ego and a younger player who was maybe feeling himself more than he should. So the on-the-court Draymond who goes to Kerr and says, I'll come off the bench, it's the best thing for the team, that to me is different than the Draymond Green who I don't think is going to settle for making less than Jordan Poole. He's not coming into camp with Jordan Poole here making 28.7 and Draymond's making 25, and Jordan Poole's going to walk up with that bounce in his step.
He may not have a choice.
Well,
unless he's being offered 30 somewhere, like them's the cookies. That's the deal. And I think he would completely accept that. Like,
I wonder.
Maybe I looked at the player option differently than some people. To me, in this NBA, let's remember now the top players in the game are making like 50, closing in on $60 million. So if you're Draymond, even if you're declining, and I think some of this is the way we were like, oh my God, are you going to pay 30? $30 million is half of what Steph is about to make here shortly. Half. So if we're looking around the league, 30 may not be what you think it is. 30 is not top of the NBA. It's not. It's good. It's very, very good player, and Draymond is that. So I look at a player option for 27.6 and a guy like Draymond Green, and the only time I ever would have thought that he would opt in is under two scenarios. One, he's hurt, or two, he didn't play well last year, and neither of them are true. So why on earth would you opt into a one-year deal when you know you're a guy who is still viable, valued, wanted, playing at a high level, even if it's a little bit of a decline? Like, I guess that's why maybe yesterday, and again, I could be wrong, but it didn't resonate with me that much because I'm like, of course he's opting out. Why on earth would he opt in? What's in it for him to do that?
Well, you opt in, and then you get 2 years tacked on to the back end of it, 2 years and $50 million.
But maybe he already knows that. Maybe he already knows that that's happening.
Maybe.
And maybe he knows that if he gives $3 or $4 million back this year, that helps the team. It helps the team go do some other things that they want to do.
It actually doesn't help the team because you're over the cap, and so there's really nothing you can do if you remain over the cap. So if Draymond plays for 23, let's just say, instead of the 27.6.
Yeah, so that does help the team.
It saves Joe Lacob 4.6, and then it saves him 4.6 times 4.75, which is another 20, but it doesn't give you any room to add any additional player because you're still over the cap. You're still deep in the tax. So unless Draymond wants to play for the vet min, which we know he's not going to do.
No, of course not. But
any savings is just a real savings for Joe Lacob. It doesn't help them get any other player.
Unless it's paired with something else. There could be other cost-saving moves that go along with this that also could pair as things that help the team. If you did do a Jordan Poole trade and did it for 75 cents on the dollar, in other words. Look, I get it. And I'm not asking players to take less than they're worth because that's absurd. Why would they do that to save Joe Lacob money? I think that's a very fair point that you're making. At the same time, I think that players sometimes more than we give them credit for are aware of the realities of the business. Draymond Green both publicly and I'm told privately, has firmly stated that he really, really, really wants to finish his career as a Warrior. So if that's his deep desire, and the Warriors keep screaming from the mountaintops, we want you. So if you got two people who are like, I want so badly to be together, I just don't think they're going to lose that over a couple $1 million. I can't imagine that. So I'm not in a space at all. And again, I'm willing to be super egg on my face. But I think the chances of Draymond being somewhere else next year are minuscule.
Yeah, and I wonder how you feel about the idea of Draymond and Jordan Poole both being here, because I've been very steadfast and resolute in my belief that they both won't be here. And based on what we heard from Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Joe Lacob in yesterday's presser, I think you're right. The odds are better than 50-50 that Draymond Green and the Warriors find a way to make it work at whatever number for the next 3 years. I do think that he wants to be coterminous, which means his deal ends when Steph Curry's deal ends.
And so why would he care about that if it was going to be somewhere else? Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think he would. And Draymond, I read a quote from Draymond yesterday when I was in the big chair and, crafting the material. Draymond had said it a year ago that he didn't want to play more than 15 years, which would be 4 more seasons.
Okay.
He said 15 was always my number. 15's my sweet spot. I'm looking at 15, and he's coming up on year 12. So that'd be 4 more years. So maybe he has his deal end in 3 with Steph, and if things are going good, they all agree to run it back one more time. But that leads to Klay Thompson. If Draymond signs, whatever the deal is, and honestly, Mark, if he signs with the Warriors, I'd be thrilled. I don't care what the money is because Chase Center is already expensive. It's not getting any cheaper, and it's Joe Lacob's money. So if you want to give Draymond $3 and $90, give him $3 and $90. I don't think that they will, and I would be really interested to see if Jordan Poole is around after Thursday. We're doing our show live from Chase Center.
Can't wait.
NBA draft show.
Yep.
And I am fascinated to see what happens between now, which is about when the Spurs will be on the clock.
48 hours,
48 hours between now and then. What happens with the Warriors?
Well, I only know one thing that's going to happen in 48 hours, and that is that Victor Wembanyama's name is going to be mentioned. Lucas just sent us a text. Did you look at this picture?
No, I've been so locked in on the content.
You're doing great.
Thanks. I was waiting for the buzzer. Thanks.
Lucas just said he sent it. Look
at
this. Look at this. I'll show it to you, and I'll put it up to the YouTube feed too, so you can all see this. That picture right there.
Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to do, I don't know if it's going to help there on YouTube. You'd have to zoom in big time. That is a picture of Victor Wembanyama's hand with a baseball in it.
That's a marble.
That's
not a baseball.
It looks like you or me holding a golf ball.
First of all, his pedicure, he is so French. Those nails are gorgeous.
Where's the buzzer? Because that's totally a manicure. That's a manicure.
Oh, I said pedicure.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm looking at his
Come
shoes.
On, Grandy.
He's got shoes on.
Missed opportunity.
Thanks.
Won't happen again.
My bad.
Appreciate it.
Well, I assume that the toes also look good.
But after that, you're right. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll say this. This is one of my huge takeaways from listening to Dunleavy. Do you notice the difference in the way that they talk about the big three versus the way they talk about everyone else?
No, and we have the cut up on the soundboard.
Now, maybe
I played it yesterday.
Maybe that's obvious. Maybe that's dumb of me to point out. Well, of course they're going to talk about their 3 champions differently than everybody else.
No, our cousin Larry Kruger was hammering this yesterday over the notion of, well, we're looking to draft players who know how to play basketball and fit into our system. And it was not very veiled the way they were describing what they're looking for.
I got all that smoke when I made the comment and the station tweeted it out about it feels like the organization is sort of against Jordan Poole, meaning that what went wrong with this team, if you asked everybody in the room, hey, what's your opinion? It feels like, well, Jordan will have his opinion. Maybe a couple of young guys would agree with him, and the rest of the organization would be on the other side of the fence. Like, dude, we didn't like the way that you played. We didn't like your attitude. That's what it feels like to me. So, flash forward to yesterday. Mike Dunleavy Jr.
I think first and foremost, like it's been said, to be able to get Draymond back would be huge. From there, we would love to make improvements to the point of, can we add some shooting? Can we add some more versatility? And can we add some connectivity? Whether that's, their ball handling, passing, veteran experience. I think we've talked to the coaching staff. We talked to our players. We have a good sense of kind of what we need to do. And fortunately, it's nothing drastic, but there's some things we can do around the margins and, make a move here or there, then we're going to be open to it.
You hear I use the word connectivity?
Yeah.
Followed by veteran presence. Okay. Connectivity and veteran presence. Now listen to this one.
We feel like our core group of guys, led by Steph Curry, is still at an incredibly high level. And for that reason, we feel like we have a chance to always be knocking on the door. And the rest of the roster going down the line, we feel like is a group that's probably needs to be better about playing together and connecting. And so that's something we'll look to solve for this offseason. And by the way, that's not only externally, that's internally, through, working together and doing all that stuff.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think he's talking about? We love our core.
Yeah.
Boy, we need Draymond back. And the rest of the roster needs to connect with us better, and we like veteran presence. Like, I don't know. I listen to all this thing, and I'm like, I got confirmation, and maybe I've got confirmation bias.
You do.
Maybe I do.
But I think a lot of people heard the same thing.
But that's what I'm hearing. I know he also said we want Poole and Kaminga back. But you hear how it's just so.
And when he talked about Poole, he talked about the contract.
Right. He's like, he'll be here because, like he's contractually here.
Yeah.
Wow, what a compliment.
And we like Jonathan Kuminga and, how much better he is getting. And, Kaminga's getting better. And, well, we've committed to Poole 9 figures over 4 years. So, of course, he'll be there. And also, you want to build these guys up just in case the phone rings over the course of the next 48 hours. And there's a team out there with veteran presence, players who are going to be good at connectivity, who maybe would be available for Poole and or Kaminga, and also the number 19 pick, which could be on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I hear a GM come out in his opener and just say, we need more connectivity, we need more connected. Okay, so that means that your review of last year is that you were disconnected. None of you need to be a rocket science to know why they were disconnected.
Well, Kevon Looney's all over the place, Mark. I mean, right? When you look at who were the connected players last year, it was the core 6 outside of Jordan Poole.
Outside of one. Sure.
At times, Jordan Poole was connected, and that's where Steph said, this guy's the key. When Jordan Poole plays connected and still is able to do his thing and attack the basket and score, then you have the connectivity he's talking about.
Did you hear anything that made you think that a Jordan Poole trade is off the table?
No.
Did you hear anything that would suggest that a Jonathan Kuminga trade is off the table?
Not a thing.
Did you hear anything that would make you think that Draymond Green and his free agency are not a priority?
No, it seems like they want Draymond back. He was very clear about that.
Did you hear anything that would suggest that they might do something with Klay Thompson?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. But
that's kind of where I was too. I know he air quotes supported Kaminga and Poole.
He did.
I didn't hear anything that took movement surrounding those guys off the table.
One question I wanted to ask, which wasn't, and I'm a little disappointed in our collected media, is a question about the salary cap and the luxury tax, because he had mentioned on the Tim Kawakami, the TK show on The Athletic, that basically, to paraphrase, we're not doing $450 million.
Yeah.
But if you bring back Draymond and Dante DiVincenzo is going to opt out, we know that he's gone. If you don't trade Jordan Poole and you draft somebody at 19 who's immediately slotted at $2.7 million, I looked it up yesterday, well, you are doing $450 million. Right. So that to me was the question that I would have loved to have them ask Joe Lacob in terms of, Joe, how comfortable are you with the new CBA soon to kick in with this very heavy luxury tax?
Although Dunleavy told us a few weeks ago there's a financial component to the offseason, and then I've heard him twice say since he's gotten the job, I've got an owner who's willing to spend. And I went, oh, okay.
We know that.
Well, right, but to say it now would suggest that maybe he is willing to go further than we originally thought.
I guess, but I
don't know how he's not going to, You can't trade Jordan Poole for no one.
Right. you're going to get some salary back, even if it's 75 cents on the dollar, like you indicated.
Yeah.
Right now, according to Basketball Reference, they're on the hook for $211 million next year.
Okay.
That's including Draymond at 27.6. So if Draymond comes in at, I don't think he's making less than 25 million next year, and that also accounts for Dante at 4.7. So if you cut Draymond down and you take Dante off, you're still at about 205 million, and that's without the draft pick at number 19.
And without the tax, obviously.
And without any other vet mins that you're going to have to bring in.
That's wild. It's wild.